Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. Pleasure to have you stop by as we get together with guests today. Always like to visit with people I meet for the first time and don't really know a lot about their backstory, so we can kind of discover together as we share and kind of unpack their lives here on the program. But it's always good to have new guests on. I've had some guests that have been on more than one time, but Michael Carpenter, I just met within the last couple of weeks.
That's right.
I was at Brown Missionary Baptist Church at a meeting, and Michael was there, and he started sharing a story, Michael, about how you listened to this radio station, Bot Radio Network, and as you shared the story, and you talked about hearing Chuck Swindoll.
That's right.
And we're gonna get into the story. I don't want to give too much away at the beginning of the show, but as you shared that story, I just had tears running down my cheek, thinking about just how good God is.
That's right.
But how are you doing? Thanks for stopping by.
I'm doing fine and real good.
You told me, I believe, that you grew up in Mississippi, North Mississippi.
Yes, Hernando.
Okay, so let's back up if we can and tell me about life growing up in Hernando. What was it like there? What the city probably wasn't too big back in those days, was it?
No city. You're right. I was raised in the field, picking cotton, plowing mule. We didn't have tractor till late on in my life, so around 1975. And so, I had a lot of brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest one.
You're the oldest of how many?
Of 10.
10 children?
10, right.
So your mom stayed busy in the kitchen, I guess, sometimes?
My mom stayed busy in the field, in the kitchen, but I probably was raised up with my grandmom them early in my life. My dad left me with my grandparents when I was about 3.
You were 3 years old?
3 years old, and I can remember it.
You can remember that?
I can remember what he said. I can remember how it smelled. I remember where I was at. I remember everything.
Oh, my. You know, it's pretty traumatic when a child sees their parents separated, or a parent abandons, the children and the family altogether. I mean, I remember that when I was about 6 or 7 when my father left, and it's like your whole life's being ripped in half.
That's right. And it's amazing, though, because now I look back on it, though, God will prepare me for what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about having, did you call it a plow mule? Is that what you called it?
Yeah, we plow mule with miller busting and all that stuff. I was raised up.
I'm a city boy, so you're going to have to help me out understand some of these terms now.
Right, so you plow the mule, you plying the rows, and because you didn't have all this stuff we have now, all technology and all this stuff. So we were plying the mules and getting the field ready to plant, and also to sog molasses. I read up where we made our own sog molasses.
I've seen that before. Now now what is that? Is it like a press or a grind or something? What do you call that?
It really a press and a grind where you get in the syrup out of the sorghum. And so my granddad helped me, well, I would help him and get it ready to make the molasses and stuff. So it was a lot of fun.
My goodness.
I think I was about 5 when I first started doing that.
So we're talking hot biscuits out of the kitchen.
Right.
And some of that fresh molasses.
Right.
Oh, you're making me so hungry thinking about that.
Right. And see, I was reared in a home where we didn't have the bathrooms and all this stuff. We didn't have bathrooms. We had outhouses and all that. Then our water, we drew our water out of the system. So it don't seem real sometimes, but it's real. It was, and
that was just within a stone's throw of the city of Memphis.
Exactly. So you're talking about around in the 70s, around 71, and the 60s as well.
Definitely. So that's when you were doing this.
Right. That's exactly right. So, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fun, and I enjoyed.
When did your day begin? What time did you wake up?
3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, because I had to go out and get the cows. I'm talking as a young boy, 5, 6 years old.
Now, when you say get the cows, what does that mean?
Get the cows ready to be milked.
Okay, so they were what, in the field or the barn, or where were they?
They was in the barn, and was in the lot, because we had to put them in the lot before we went to bed at night.
Yeah.
And then in the morning time, we had to milk them. to get the milk and the churn.
And when you describe milk, you talked about, you used your hands, so there was no automation here, huh?
No, you milk it like this.
So how long would it take you to get a cup of milk?
Not long, but not especially with some of the cows we had, because some of them were dairy cow, so they would produce more milk.
They were easier to do that.
That's right.
Was there a technique? I always wondered if you just grab and pinch pull. I mean, or was there a technique to it? There's a technique to it.
You'll get kicked.
I probably would get kicked a whole lot. Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
And so, and you also talked about picking cotton, and I've heard that picking cotton, the term obviously, and I don't think everybody understands what's involved with doing it. I know it's hard work, but what's all involved in picking cotton?
Well, my grandmom, the one was with me in the picking the cotton. When I started picking cotton, she put, we had a flour sack where we used to get flour in. And so she tied the flour sack around me. So I would work with her when I was about, 5, 6, 7 years old. So she would pick and I would pick, and we would pick the cotton and put it in the sack. And then
I would be curious, Michael, at some of the conversations, if you can even remember some of the conversations you would have with your grandmother while you spent that time together.
She talked about life, just talked about showing me how to, number one, to forgive my father. Because I developed this hatred for my father. And every time she would mention my father, I didn't want to hear it. I would tell her, I just didn't, even at an early age, I told her I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to know nothing about it.
Yeah.
And so she would tell me, son, he's still your dad. And I hated to hear that. Yeah, I hated to hear that. But she was right.
And she kept telling you that?
She kept telling me that. She kept reminding me that he was my father.
Wow.
Yeah. But I didn't want to hear that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So, but we would have that conversation, and we would have conversation about my mom. And at that time, I really didn't know too much about my mom. I thought about it a lot because my mom wasn't there in the early part of my life. She went off to school. And so my grandparent would tell me about that.
So really, your grandparents kind of stood in for you as really parents while of course, your dad had left home. Your mom was trying to do better, get an education so she can ultimately provide for her 10 children.
That's right. At that time, it wasn't 10.
Right.
It was 3 of us.
3 of you at that time, yeah.
But yes, she and then she remarried. And so that's where the other kids come along.
Siblings.
Right.
Was that a big adjustment for you?
It really wasn't, because my mom, when she come back in my life, I think I was around in the 4th grade. And so my mom come in and she really spent a lot of time and helped me understand how to respect my stepdad. That I had a great stepdad, Willie Greer was his name.
Really?
He was Greer, yeah. And so he was a great man. He had his faults, but he was a great man. He just accepted me. Yeah. I
like that. I can tell there was some affection there, because you smiled when you mentioned his name.
Yeah.
And you said that, children need approval, don't we, from our parents?
Yeah.
And you didn't get it from your dad. He rejected you.
Yeah.
But here comes Willie in your life.
Right.
And he showed you what it was to respect you, to love you, to care about you.
He did.
Wow. What were some things that he did to show that and express that to you?
Well, one day that I had a hog, a big hog that I had, and I was crazy about this hog. And my dad told me that we had to kill a hog for our meat. And I told him, no, we couldn't kill that one. And he said, yeah, we got to kill him because that hog will hurt you. And I was like, no. So we had this going back and forth. And he said, yeah. He said, well, I tell you what you do. You take a grain, a thing of corn, go out there and put it in front of him, raise up his ear, then look at his eye. So I went and I done that. And that was horrifying to me. It scared me real bad because, it would just look like stuff was moving around in his eye. And then his tusks had started coming out. So he really was wild.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't imagine. So it really could have been dangerous.
It was dangerous.
Yeah.
And my dad he was able to see that.
You knew that.
And so that protected me from that.
Wow.
So,
there's so much about, especially if you're like myself, have been raised, in the city and don't have much contact with farm life. And there's some values there you learn that the city folks just don't know about.
Because I really thought you city folk didn't have no sense. That's what I thought.
Probably not.
Yeah, because men would come down and I had to go out and get stuff to help them, like different food, help some of our family in the city.
Do you remember, Michael, attending church when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, we went to church every Sunday. You had to go to church.
Yeah.
That wasn't anything that you talked about.
Yeah.
And so yes, we went to church. Really, how I learned Genesis 1, 2, and 3 was through my Sunday school teacher. And she taught me Genesis 1, 2, and 3.
And tell us what that says.
And Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And as he moved through Genesis 1 and 2, he get into where the fall come in with Adam and Eve. So that really set my mindset,
I think it's so important that for us to understand where we're heading, we need to know where we've come from.
Exactly.
And some people, they have these things you can go on and buy these, trace your ancestry and learn, about your family.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with those ancestry experiences or those tools that you use, they don't go back far enough.
Nope.
Because if you trace them as far back as you're supposed to go, then you'll come to Adam and Eve, the very first.
Exactly.
Yeah, like you said.
Exactly.
So people don't go that far back, do they?
No, but that's where my family went. And then my mom is a Christian, or was a Christian, and my grandmom and my granddad. I don't know where he fit in there too good, but they really pushed me to know Christ, to make sure I know Jesus as my Lord and Savior.
Now, how old were you when you left the farm? You call it the farm?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I went off to college, went off to Northwest Junior College and playing football. I played football for a couple of years for them. And I began to pursue the life of the world, which was, I had a psychology teacher who was telling me that we evolved from a lower form of an ape, and I couldn't buy that.
Yeah.
And so he was really upset with me.
But your grandparents, like you said, brought you up in the church. You learned, your teacher taught you about Genesis, where it all began.
Right.
Then you go to college, and this guy's trying to tell you about some kind of apes, huh?
Yeah, and I just could not accept that because we went to the zoo. You went to the zoo and you saw the animals in the zoo, and then I grew up on a farm. I knew that could not be true. Even though I watched Hercules years ago, where Hercules, you had half horse, half man. I just couldn't.
Those mythological creatures,
exactly.
Which are all obviously made up.
Exactly.
So after college, what were your dreams? What did you want to do?
Well, I had my wife and myself. We met in high school, and so, but I always wanted to marry her. I was going to go off and play pro ball. But then I got hurt a little bit, and then I got thinking, and I watched so many guys that come out of pro, legs and stuff messed up. So I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So I was looking at the military. Then, but God, I didn't know God would direct in my life. I could hear him talking to me, but I didn't know him. I knew he was talking to me. I could hear him talking to me when I was a little boy, but I just couldn't find him. So I was looking for him in all the wrong places. I could hear him talking, but I couldn't find him. So one day, I was when I got married and had my 3 kids, and I worked for Baptist Hospital downtown, and so I was driving to work, and I was listening at one of the radio stations, jamming my radio station, having a good time, and I got to Brooks and Elvis Presley. There's the Brooks and the Expressway. And all at once, something started telling me, jump out the car, kill yourself, your father don't love you, and all this stuff was going through my head. I thought it was coming out of the radio, so I started turning the radio. But as I turned the radio, it was getting louder and louder. And then I'm like, oh, okay, but what messed up thing was about it was when he said, God don't love you. He said, I said, oh, no, I can't accept that. I knew God loved me. But I didn't know nothing about the devil. I didn't know how he operated then. And so I started turning the radio station, trying to find, is this coming out of the radio station? I hit Chuck's window, and he was teaching out the book of Hebrew. And he was talking about the blood of Jesus and what Jesus done for us. And I listened to him. And when I got to the emergency room at Baptist Hospital, I stopped right there and asked Christ to come in my life. Yeah.
Wow. What a wonderful story, Michael.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
really what I wanted you to share today,
Yeah.
primarily, is
Yeah.
that what took place
Yeah.
that day, because you had kind of lost hope and you didn't have
Yeah.
direction, but
Yeah.
you knew that God still
Loved me.
loved
I
me,
knew God
just
loved
loved you
me.
despite
I
the way
knew.
you were feeling, despite the way your father had treated you and
Yeah.
the pain you'd gone through.
Yeah.
And so you turned the radio, or you changed the channel, and you found Bot Radio Network.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Satan was talking to me. Satan was telling me to kill myself. My dad didn't love me and all this stuff. But, where he messed up at was when he said God didn't love me. And that I just couldn't buy that one.
Yeah.
I knew in my heart that God loved me, but I didn't know how to get to God.
Yeah.
And so when I found the station where Swindoll was on, Charles Swindoll, that's when I heard the gospel. And,
wow.
Yeah. And then I'll say, yeah.
And so from that time on, tell me about your life. What began to change in your life?
Well, everything changed. I mean, my God, I went running back home after when I went on to work, because I was in engineering, and I went back home to share with my mom and them and everybody. They told me I was crazy. I was already saved, and they thought that because I had been baptized, they based me on baptism, and I thought, no, I've been baptized, but that wasn't what saved. So I began to ask the Lord that I want my whole family to be saved. And so out of that, people on my job got saved, men and people got saved at Baptist Hospital. And my family got saved. So it was a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing.
He's been working with me ever since.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Something else as a result of this changed life that Christ did for you, and he does for those who will, put their trust, realize their need, first of all, that they need us. We need a Savior, and he provides that salvation through his death on the cross. And so when you came to that point, God's opened up the other doors for you. You talked about praying for your family, those that you work with, but you have a ministry to troubled youth.
Yes.
And tell me how that came about.
Well, I went off to college. I was called in the ministry, so I was ordained as a minister. And then I went off to college to Elijah Cottrell Theological Seminary down in Olive Branch, but they moved to Holly Springs, I think. But anyway, then out of that, I was able to work with the youth. So when I started working at the facility in which I worked for, the chaplain, he quit because he didn't know how to handle the kids, so he quit.
So tell me, where were these kids at? Was it a home for the kids, or
right?
Okay,
right, home for the kids. They stay there. And so when he quit, I just volunteered and started doing it. That you talking about back in 94, 95, somewhere in there. And so I volunteered and started doing it. So I've been doing it.
And what are the ages of the children, Michael?
Oh man, at that time we had kids 5 all the way up to 17. Yeah.
And why? Now, tell me their circumstances that caused them to live in this particular home.
Well, like mine, when I was young, father left, mom left.
Now, are they appointed by the state? So this is a state-run home?
State-run home, yes.
Okay.
They're appointed by the state, yes.
So they have a variety of reasons why they're there.
A variety of reasons.
Now, are any of them, with maybe addictions themselves or drug addictions?
Yeah, some of them
have that kind of background.
We have it all. We deal with all of it that you can name, and we deal with that with the kids. But the beautiful part about it is watching God work. Because one time on September 11, when we got hit in America, the facility asked me not to. They didn't want me talking about the Lord in there anymore. And the next day, September 11 hit. And so when that happened, everybody was afraid. So they called me.
There was a lot of people back then that were flying American flags and going to the churches were being filled up again, because of that time. So they wanted you to talk about the Lord.
Yeah. Talk with the staff, talk with the kids, talk with everybody. So I went out in the wood and prayed and asked the Lord to give me the words to say to everybody because they thought the world was coming to the end.
Yeah, I remember that time as well. So many of our listeners do.
Mhm.
Wow. And so now, is your wife, is she involved in any of the ministry you do there?
No, she not. She she retired, and I'm still working.
Yeah.
And but she involved with ministry at the church, and I am too, because I'm with prayer and evangelist ministry at our church. And but she worked with helping with the grandkids
Well,
and
that's a
everything.
ministry
She
right there.
is a big
Yeah, the
ministry.
power of a grandparent in the child's life, grandchild's life is so,
Yep.
well needed,
Yeah. Yeah.
Some grandparents think, well, they want to, get to a point where they can retire and if they have any savings to go off somewhere. But
Yeah.
boy, if you're close to your grandkids, you got a
Yeah.
great opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how often do you go over and work with these youth?
Every day.
Do you really?
Just left them over there every day from 4. I have to be there at 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
4:30 in the morning.
You're up there at 4:30 every morning.
4:30 every morning, except Saturday. I go on Sunday because I'm the chaplain. So I go
Michael,
on Sunday.
that's a commitment.
Every Sunday. Every Sunday.
I mean, how do you tell me how you stay motivated to do that?
The Holy Spirit. I mean, knowing the Lord and knowing that you want other people to know, especially the kids, because not just for going to heaven, but living here on this earth, walking with the Lord, seeing the Holy Spirit move in their life.
Yes.
And change their life, because I believe they're the future for America. And we spend so much time talking about the negative stuff. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
I can see that God can move in our next generation. I tell them all the time, I'm getting old. You all got to carry the torch, and a lot of them are listening.
Yeah.
They're listening.
Have you seen any of the youth that you can remember maybe in some of the early days, if you first started in that work, now where they are today, and how are they going? Are they going?
Oh yes. I was at Baptist Collierville, doing some work out there for them at the hospital, and it was one young man came in that had gone off to the Marine, and he knew my boys, but he didn't know where it was from. And so he had his daughters, and he said, "I know you from somewhere." Well, anyway, we talked with one another, and then he remembered. He said, because I said to him, if it was up to me, all the young men would do some military training, and he decided to go to the military.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. So words count a lot.
They do, don't they?
They do.
They can be powerful, and especially when you talk to, we as you mentioned, some folks sort of comment about the negativity of today's youth, but I mean, they can be very pliable with some direction and some encouragement. Spending time with them, letting them know that you care, which is what you've done.
That's it.
And thankfully, you had some grandparents to let you know that they cared for you.
Yes.
And then you had your stepfather who came into your life and let you know he cared.
Yeah.
So it's important that we all have people in our lives that can let us know that, hey, they care and that we're loved.
You're right. And then my dad, I have to give it to my dad though. When my kids was in teenage, I flew them out to California to spend time with my dad.
So you reconnected with your dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So you were able to forgive your dad.
Yes. Now that's the key right there. To forgive my dad, and because I hate him. And
how did you do that? I mean, when did he come back into your life?
Well, he always came and left, and he would come and left because of him and my mom. That relationship wasn't there. But when I flew out and I had been saved, then I knew the Lord. So now I want the Lord put it on my heart. You need to go and spend time with your dad. I didn't want to go, but I went. And so I spent a whole week, me and my 3 kids, and my dad. It was a beautiful time with him because I had learned how to forgive because God forgave me. I mean, he whooped me pretty good. God whooped me pretty good on that. But I forgave my dad. But then I heard his side of the story. And once, because I was just only hearing my mom's side. But when I heard my dad's side, I liked to hear his better than I did. My mom,
kind of balanced out.
Oh yeah.
And so, did you actually ask him to forgive you, or did you just kind of naturally forgive him in your heart and just go on with life?
I naturally forgave him, and then, I had to forgive him. Both of us had to do some forgiving.
Yeah,
and we did. We sat up all night and talked about different stuff, and It was beautiful. It seemed like I spent that 1 week. It seemed like I spent a whole lifetime with him. Just
Really?
that 1 week. That 1 week.
And you were able to connect your children with him too.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
So,
And his family.
wow.
Yeah.
And today, how is your parents still living?
No.
Okay.
All of them.
Okay.
Yeah, all of them.
But you were
Yeah.
able to have final goodbyes and
yes.
with love and connection there.
Yeah, because God had forgiven me.
God had forgiven you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I keep going thinking back about the radio, because I like to say that our radio, there's a lot of radio stations on the air all over the country. And they play different kinds of music, different kinds of news, different kinds of format. But one of the things I like to say, Michael, about what we have here at Bot Radio Network, God's Word, which it's so, it's good for the soul, really good for the soul, because it can change a life drastically.
That's right.
It changed the trajectory of your life completely.
That's right. And I have a problem myself with Christians when I introduce them to Bob Radio. I'm just going to be honest with you, and all races, because I talk to all races. And if you tell me that you really want to grow in Christ, and I share with you how you can really grow, just by listening to Bob Radio, because you talking Charles Swindoll, Adrian Roger, and Charles Stanley helped me with depression years ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, Dr. J. Vernon McGee, John MacArthur, and Tony Evans. I mean, I can go on and on and on. But all these guys, I mean, my God, if you want to grow, there's no excuse. I mean, there's no excuse. So, right, Bob Radio is, I mean, it's nothing I can say. Dr. Dobson helped me with knowing how to handle my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Dobson, man. And I just take my hat off to Dr. Dobson.
Yeah. Great guy, great ministry. Thankful that Focus on the Family continues on with us here at Bot Radio Network. Yeah. Wow. Well, Michael, this has been great. Like I said, I was just thrilled to meet you at Brown Church, like I mentioned, as we opened a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, your story's got to be shared. It's one of those stories that people need to hear about and just see how, God has taken your life and directed you and how the impact you're having on these young people today.
Level.
Yeah.
Level.
So, and how many children do you have now?
I have 4.
You have 4?
I have 4.
Okay.
I have 4. And I have 4 boys.
Do you get to spend time with them?
Yes, I have 3 in Florida. So we went down and spent some time with them. I was just telling my wife the other day we got to take off and go back down and spend some time with her.
Yeah.
I have 1 here.
There's something about it. If you're away from your grandkids too long, there's like a clock inside you says, you got to go connect with them. You got to go hang out with them. Yeah. My granddaughter, I have 2, and she's 6 years old today as we record our program.
Yeah.
So it's pretty special. I love hanging out with her and her little sister too, that's a year old now.
Yeah.
But this has been great. What would you say to someone that's listening right now that maybe has been hearing the programs, and they talking about this relationship with Jesus, but they don't quite get it or understand it? What would you say to them?
I would say to them to take time to listen to the Holy Spirit leading in your heart, where you sit before whatever ministry, whether it's Charles Swindoll, Dr. Roger, Dr. J. Vernon McGee, anyone, just sit down and take the Bible and sit down and listen and allow God speak to your heart. And he really will move. Yeah, and because oftentimes we put a lot of burden on the church to do what we need to do for ourselves. And Bob Radio, I'm just going to say it like it is, Bob Radio have really stepped in and helped us right there.
Wow. God bless you, my dear friend. Michael Carpenter, our guest today. Really have been delighted to visit with Michael and him to share his heart. Thank you, friend, for joining us too. And maybe if you're looking and questioning what a relationship with Christ is all about, we would love to talk to you here at Bot Radio Network. We could help direct you. Sure, Michael might even be open to talk to you. He has a prayer ministry, even pray for you. You could reach out to us here at Bot Radio Network here in Memphis. We'd be happy to get that information and pass it on to Michael. possibly an opportunity for him to let you to know more about how he walks with Christ and maybe pray for you too. But hey, we've really enjoyed this time, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I do appreciate you stopping by. I want to say a special thanks to our YouTube channel listeners right now as we've been streaming live as we record the interview. This program will air in the next couple of weeks on AM 640 and FM 100.7 here in Memphis on the Bot Radio Network affiliate. But thank you so much for hanging out with us and watching. Please like the video. Please share the video so others can hear the story of transformation that took place in Michael's life. And we appreciate it. God bless you. That's all the time we have. I'm Byron Tyler. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.